So I know some of you won't have had a chance to have read the letter we sent on Friday. I wanted to begin by just sharing some of that in person with you. I said, I write to you with a broken heart, and on behalf of Emily, whose heart is broken as well, that after months of discernment and countless tears, we've determined that we must resign from our position as your ministers. And I know we're not alone in our heartbreak. To elaborate on what I shared last month, Emily has been struggling with anxiety and depression that began postpartum. And the intensity of the mental health challenge has been up and down for over 2 years now, and we've sought care in many different ways. And at this point, it's become clear that as a family, we will need to rely on support of close friends and extended family for the months and likely years ahead as we navigate the challenge. So in the coming months, we will move back to the San Francisco Bay Area, where we have our deep network of personal support. And Emily has begun already that process. She's living there with friends now and seeking treatment. I've worked really hard to imagine a scenario in which we could stay and continue being your ministers, continue to build on this beautiful thing we've been doing together here. This ministry has been Emily and my dream and vision for years, and I could not imagine a better place, a better community to have lived it with. Leaving is really one of the hardest decisions that either of us has ever had to make. There's a lot left to be said, a lot left to be felt, a lot left to be shared and reflected on together. So while Emily will stay in Berkeley over the next couple of months, there will be many opportunities to connect and grieve and celebrate with me. So the beginning of that is today, of course, and if you can, stay after the service, have a sandwich downstairs, and then we'll just have some conversation, answer questions, and get a chance to hear from me and hear from you about this decision. I'll be available throughout the next week ahead, and we're planning now for June 3rd to be my final Sunday here with you. Thanks for standing with me here, Leslie.
My pleasure. Thanks to all of you for being here. I remember May 2 years ago sitting just back there in the pews with many of you when we called Emily and Marcus. And I can remember the time during which we sang them in after we'd taken our vote, and we sang under Allison's guidance, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. And these two beautiful people holding this incredible baby with this super cute man's hat on his head came down the aisles, and we welcomed them with joy. And my heart was full and my spirit was soaring. It was a magical moment. And in the last 2 years, I've gotten to work very closely with Emily and Marcus as a member of the Board of Trustees, but particularly in this last year when I've been the president. Oftentimes I'm asked, what about that president gig? That's kind of a tough row to hoe. And I'm like, are you kidding? I get to work with these two rock star ministers. And really it has been like that for me, a joy, a pleasure. And I've learned so much. Thank you for this magic, Marcus. Thanks from the bottom of my heart for all that you have brought and given to us. And please pass that thanks and that recognition along to Emily. We will take that forward. Our experience with you is informing our next steps, and you've reshaped us because, as John Biasucci put it in a meeting he was attending by phone with Marcus and I earlier this week, you've shown us what's possible. And so that forever is a part of the DNA of North Shore Unitarian Church. But life has taken a turn, as it does, and Emily's health comes first. And now we have to let the dream go that we were holding so closely and so tightly of having a future with Emily and Marcus along with us. This will be hard, but I've been in this church long enough to know that you'll bring your hearts full of thanks and understanding to Emily and Marcus. And I know you'll bring your heads full of ideas. I've heard from some of you already about how we will shape our future. I and all of your board, who will also be in attendance at this afternoon's meeting, look forward to talking with you about the shape after the service as we start to grapple with this change and the shape of our future. Thank you for being here.
Will you sing with me? Let's rise together in body or in spirit. We'll sing, come sing a song with me. I've been writing a lot of poetry the last few months. I don't usually share my own poetry with you, but I will today, and it's been one of my meditations, one of my times for centering through hard days. So I invite you to rest into that place with me now. This time that is for stillness, this time for the breath, for that connection down to this good earth, supporting us wherever we are. A broken heart. When the heart breaks, unlike my phone or the dishwasher, there is no rapid repair service to call. And no amount of money will fix things any faster. When my bicycle pump broke and no longer had the strength to push and compress, to turn empty space into solidity, into lift and flight, I gave up on fixing it and bought another. But the broken heart still pumps, still compresses and pushes, blood still animates the body. In truth, there is nothing broken about a broken heart. Really, I tell myself it's working exactly as intended. The ripping you feel all at once, a vicious retching, or one small tear and then another and another. And sometimes both. And sometimes wild and savage, and sometimes precise, a surgeon's incision, and sometimes the innocent meandering cuts of a child playing aimlessly with scissors, the kind they have in elementary school art class to make interesting patterns with zigzags or swivels. The ripping you feel does not stop the heart working. The ripping you feel is the broken heart at work. A sign that in truth, this thing you love or loved but love, this anything, this everything, really, it is plain to see, matters in a way that cannot be fixed or repaired, cannot be bought anew at the store like a bicycle pump. Spirit of life and love, wholehearted and broken-hearted all at once, we rest in this silence together. May it hold and heal us all. In this community of care, we light 2 candles each week. The first for the joys and sorrows among us in our extended community. And as the poet William Blake said, joy and woe are woven fine. So we celebrate as well today with Sanford and Betty Ann Osler, blessed with their first grandchild on March 28th. A 7.5-pound healthy boy born to their son Matthew and wife Tanya. Their family welcomes little Felix, and we welcome him with you. And in grief and in sympathy with Lindsay Hindle, whose father-in-law, I just heard this morning, passed away. And sympathy also to Gwen Bird on the death of her beloved mother in Toronto on March 25th. Jo Bird was a mother of 4, grandmother of 6, and a caring and dedicated physician before her retirement. I invite you to call aloud any other those names, those people who you'd like to embrace in the love of this community. For all that's been spoken, all that remains in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. We light this candle of hope. And two, we light this candle of witness, knowing that for all that is happening in our hearts here, there is happening things in hearts of all those around the world. And witness this morning, I'm thinking especially of those victims and their families of the chemical attack in Syria. May the world one day know peace. May we extend to all beings the compassion we offer one another here. Peace upon each and all. From Mary Oliver's Blackwater Pond. To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. I am not ready. We had only just begun. We had only just begun. I've been thinking about when we first planned for this emergence worship theme months and months and months ago. I'd imagined that image of the butterfly emerging from the chrysalis. But that's not where we're at right now, is it? And as Emily was looking for metaphors to share her experience with you, as she realized she would need to step away from ministry for the time being, she began to describe herself as being in that pupa state. You kind of wish that in the pupa state it was like half caterpillar, half butterfly. Like it would just kind of grow wings and shed a few, I guess not pounds quite, but no, there's no half butterfly, half caterpillar moment. Oh no, it has to dissolve into that no longer caterpillar and not yet butterfly soup. At one point when Emily was trying to figure out how to talk to you about what's been going on for her, she wrote about that pupa stage saying, "That's been my experience the past few months. I have been more like soup than like myself. And at this point, our whole family is a bit of a pupa soup, dissolving this beloved dream of co-ministry that we'd just begun with you, dissolving the life we just started building here. And I know some of you feel like that too. We're dissolving in this ministry together, dissolving and grieving not only the good that has been, but like Leslie was saying, the bright and exciting future that we've been anticipating, dreaming together. For some of us, it is a lot to grieve. And because I've known for some time now that this was a possible outcome, I've been in and out of my own grief for a few months. In one of the recent board conversations, Marcia Stevenson was reminding us of the Kubler-Ross stages of grief. I'm sure some of you have heard them, those 5: shock and denial, anger, bargaining, depression, finally acceptance. And our understanding now, we know they're not really linear stages, but more like waves that come and go. I've been hit by them all by now. Some have returned for many visits. I spent some good time in denial. Not only of the possibility that we would actually have to leave this dream ministry, this perfect place, but also in my grief over Emily's health, denial about the severity of her condition. I've been angry, explosively so in moments. And I've bargained, boy, how I've bargained. We looked up and down at every possible configuration to hold on to our ministry with you, a long leave of absence for Emily, or both of us perhaps, or perhaps I could commute up to you from San Francisco, come to Vancouver for a stretch each month, while we lived with greater support in California, or if we could just get the right treatment in place, if we can just get over the next hurdle, maybe we can make this work still. I bargained with desperation. And I felt that fourth one as well. I felt the raw hunger of depression gnawing at the edges of my own being. Spent sleepless nights racked with sorrow, found myself in tears as I commute to and from the church. After informing the board of our decision this week, acceptance is starting to sink in. And it's important, I think, for me to let you know as well that there's a feeling of relief, a degree of relief now. The relief of a plan to move towards support, towards sustainability, toward hope for the well-being of our family. You know, looking back on the past several months, I've been thinking about a quote by the spiritual teacher Byron Katie. She's a bit controversial, but she says, "When I fight with reality, I lose, but only 100% of the time." So I've had some months with my grief, but each of us will metabolize our grief or whatever your experience may be at our own pace, in our own way. This can be challenging sometimes when those we are close to are in a different stage of the process. I'll say Emily and I have polarized with one another at times. One deep in our anger while the other is bargaining. One in denial while the other is working on acceptance. It's hard. And so with all of us, with any grief, doing this dance with all its jagged stops and starts. And throughout these months of facing the possibility, feeling this grief, this moment, this facing you all, sharing the news, trying to figure out what to say about it, has been playing on repeat through my mind. You know, something about me, you might have picked up on this, I hate disappointing people. I hate it. I will usually bend over backwards, way overextend myself to avoid the experience of disappointing people. It's not a particularly helpful trait as a minister. It's a job that some ministers say is the art of disappointing people at a rate that they can handle. Well, but here we are. And I know that you understand why we made this decision. Thank you. I know. But it's also an incredible disappointment, and it's okay to hold that truth too. And the second and related thing about me that makes this particularly hard is that acknowledging my limitations is also a growing edge for me. As we say in seminary, we talk a lot about growing edges in seminary. I've been wishing that there was a way I could continue to prioritize caring for Henry, caring for Emily, and still be able to show up as your minister. My instincts say, use those broad shoulders, you can bear it all. But I can't. This being human is a guest house, writes Rumi. Every morning a new arrival. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Each has been sent as a guide from beyond. This being human is a guest house. And we plan and vision and dream, and these are good things, planning and dreaming and visioning, but then we awake each morning to a new arrival. And sometimes our unexpected visitors go right along with our plans. And sometimes they disrupt and unravel, push us in different, perhaps undesired directions. When I fight with reality, I lose, but only 100% of the time. I had a moment of levity this week when a family we've gotten close with here invited us over for a Passover Seder. 8 kids under 5 whirled through the house. Talk about a guest house. As a dozen adults shouted over one another, expounding the meaning of the ritual foods, telling fragments of the Passover story, singing the prayers, clamoring to pass the wine. There's a lot of wine in the Passover meal. You might remember 2 years ago, it was also the end of Passover when I preached for the first time here, the first sermon of our candidating week. I talked about the story then, the story of the ancient Israelites being freed from slavery in Egypt, which through ritual and reflection has become a story of liberation that stands in for liberation of all kinds, including the spiritual liberation from the pharaohs we hold within. And I remember talking about the part of that story that doesn't get told at the Seder meal, the next chapter, that even after being liberated from slavery, the Israelites still had to wander the desert for 40 years. This journey through the desert, like the soup stage of the pupa, it's the hard price we pay for the precious gift of life. What Reverend Lynn Unger names the terrible blessing of the journey. I shared with you then a fragment of my own experience with depression. I shared with you about returning for the first time to the church of my childhood in Oakland, where Emily is this morning. and the healing that I was enfolded in there. I shared this then, and I want to share it again now. This is what I said. What saved me, what healed me, what made me whole was not psychiatrists or time as an inpatient in the hospital or pharmaceuticals or therapists or exercise, though they were all helpful. They were all helpful. What saved me was a religious community, a religious tradition that told me to seek support anywhere I could find it, to open to Buddhist teachings and practices of mindfulness, as well as the wisdom and the scientific traditions of psychology and psychiatry. What saved me was a religious community that told me, with so much more than words, you are loved. At the root of it all, there is a love holding you. A love holding all, no matter what you do, or what you say, or what you think, or what you feel, you are loved. And we know so little, really, especially from a scientific standpoint, about mental health. The miracle cure for one produces nothing but harmful side effects for another. The biochemical and the situational, the challenges of the psyche and of the spirit and of the body all dance together in such a subtle and complex way, it's nearly impossible to ever pinpoint the precise cause of mental health distress. But we are getting better as a culture, and we're taking more seriously the need for mental health care, and with less social stigma, less shame, though they still play far too large a role in our culture. We know so little, but I do know this: religious community. Community that is about supporting one another through hard times. Yes. And celebrating and playing with one another too, yes, but also that is about holding on to the guidebooks, to the deep well springs of spiritual renewal, community that is about making rich and empowering meaning together. Religious community has an essential role to play in providing the context for healing and wholeness and integration in our lives. You can hold one another through anything. What we do here matters. And I say this not to flatter you, but just by plain, honest observation. You in this community know more about how to offer the quality of care that creates that context of wholeness and healing than most. This community really does know something about that. You're a people who know what it means to face serious challenges, who know what it means to love one another and the world, to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And I know that it just sucks. It just sucks that we didn't have longer with you. And I know that this will be a very good place, doing very good work for many years to come. So a blessing to close. It's from the late poet John O'Donohue. It's titled the Benach, which is Gaelic for blessing. A blessing for you, a blessing for Emily, for our family. It's a blessing I often shared with those when I worked as a chaplain in inpatient mental health. A blessing for us all. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, May a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the carack of thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so, may a slow wind work these words of love around you. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you. An invisible cloak to mind your life. May it be so.